Picture a company that practically invents an entire global industry from thin air, builds a massive empire, and then completely obliterates it. That's the wild, legendary story of Atari.
We're tracking this massive corporate Icarus flight, from a scrappy $250 startup to a multi-billion-dollar tech giant with cracks in its foundation, straight through to open floodgates, a literal desert landfill disaster, and the fiery crash that eventually birthed modern gaming as we know it.
It's hard to believe, but this absolute juggernaut of an empire started with an unbelievably tiny investment.
Back in 1972, a 29-year-old engineer named Nolan Bushnell took just $250, and founded Atari. Interestingly, he named it after a Japanese Go term that literally means you are about to be surrounded. Pretty prophetic, right? Although probably not in the way you hoped.
Their first massive hit was Pong. It was dead simple, but people went absolutely crazy for it. In fact, when they dropped the very first arcade cabinet at Andy Capp's Tavern in California, it completely broke down in a matter of days. The problem? The coin box was literally jammed shut with too many quarters. It was suffering from its own success.
From there, growth exploded. They went from a two-person garage gig to a $40 million powerhouse by 1974. And then came 1977. They dropped the Atari 2600, bringing massive arcade hits like Space Invaders and Asteroids right into people's living rooms, eventually moving over 30 million consoles.
But behind the scenes of all this wild, unprecedented success, a massive, fatal flaw was forming in their foundation.
By 1982, Atari was raking in a staggering $2 billion a year. Let that sink in. They controlled 80% of the home market and had an army of 10,000 employees. Warner Communications had bought them out and thought they had a flawless, untouchable money-printing machine. Here's where it all goes wrong. They treated the actual creators, the programmers, horribly. Imagine writing code that generates $100 million in profit, and your take-home is a flat $25,000 salary. No royalties, no bonuses, and your name isn't even allowed on the box.
That sheer arrogance, that refusal to value talent, ended up opening the floodgates and changing the tech landscape forever.
In 1979, 4 of their absolute best developers finally had enough. They demanded basic credit for their work. Atari flat out rejected them, so they walked. They left and formed Activision, becoming the world's very first third-party game developer. And this proved a very dangerous point. Absolutely anyone could figure out how to make games for the 2600.
Once that cat was out of the bag, total chaos ensued. Dozens of random companies rushed in trying to make a quick buck. And because Atari had recklessly put zero licensing controls or safeguards in place, the market was instantly flooded with cheap, terrible games. There was literally no barrier to entry, just mountains of garbage software piling up.
This total lack of quality control perfectly set the stage for arguably the most spectacular product disaster in history.
Enter E.T. Atari dropped a cool $20 million just for the rights to the movie. They figured the brand name alone would sell millions, so they forced a single programmer to build the entire game from scratch. Oh, and he had exactly 5 weeks to finish it for the Christmas 1982 rush. 5 weeks. The hubris here is just staggering. They were so confident that they manufactured 5 million cartridges. But the game, well, it was catastrophically bad. It was so universally hated that they only managed to sell 1.5 million copies.
So, what do you do with millions of useless, unsold games? Well, Atari literally loaded them into a fleet of trucks, drove them out to Alamogordo, New Mexico, and buried them in a dirt landfill in the middle of the desert. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
That literal desert burial was the ultimate symbol of an industry in freefall, leading to a catastrophic crash and a really unexpected rebirth.
The video game crash of 1983 absolutely decimated the market. In just 1 year, Atari lost $536 million. Their revenue nosedived from $2 billion down to $100 million. Retailers wouldn't touch games, people called it a dead fad, and despite trying to bounce back in the 90s with the Lynx and the Jaguar, Atari was essentially dead by 1996.
But gaming didn't die, right? In 1985, Nintendo stepped in with the NES and completely rebuilt the industry from scratch. How? By doing exactly what Atari refused to do. Nintendo implemented incredibly strict quality controls and robust hardware lockouts. If they didn't approve your game, it wouldn't run on their system. Period.
It's such a timeless warning.
Nolan Bushnell took $250, built a multi-billion-dollar empire, and watched it crumble to dust. They proved that treating your top creators like disposable, replaceable parts will eventually destroy you, and the second you start assuming the money will never stop flowing is exactly when it dries up.
So, looking around at today's digital landscape and how our modern tech giants treat their creators, you really have to wonder, are we just burying cartridges in the desert all over again?